Program is rated GE. Content carried in here is suitable for general family viewing.
Elected leaders being held accountable by the electorate during, after every electioneering period is key, especially when leaders dangle manifestos to the electorate in a way of wooing them. Join me on Law Matters, a show that is educative, informative, and provides legal solutions to issues that we face on a day-to-day basis through Legal Aid Clinic at KUTV Live at Kenyatta University School of Law here in campus. You can join us and interact with us in our social media platform at KUTV Kenya Live on YouTube, at KUTV Kenya on Facebook, and at KUTV_Kenya on Twitter. Now, when it comes to the issues of accountability, leaders are called upon to ensure that the issues that they keep to the electorate are in check. Now, my name is Irene Mwangi. I'm standing in for Dr. Ngugi Kingara. Now, with 7 days to the elections, we have seen different leaders from the presidency to the members of county assembly woo the voters through their manifesto. But before we get into the gist of the discussion, let me first allow my guest to introduce himself.
Thank you, Irene. My name is Jackson Lungwe. I'm an advocate to the High Court of Kenya, and I'm very glad to be on your show.
All right, thank you so much for joining us. Now, we're talking about the issue of accountability of leaders, but first, before we get into the gist of the discussion, let's first understand what really is accountability.
Accountability is a very broad term, which is quite often misunderstood by the people who are supposed to ensure that the term itself come to life. Accountability, in essence, means the nature of holding the leaders which you have elected or you have entrusted with mandate to serve you to a level whereby they become responsible, they become answerable, and they take responsibility in terms of the decision that they make, in terms of their actions, and in terms of their conduct throughout the course of their service in the particular office that you have given them to serve.
All right, you have really given a description there, but when you look into accountability, is it defined in terms of mechanisms, or is it a broad statement that cut across?
It is defined. It is defined in terms of mechanisms. It's defined also in terms of the position that you hold. It's also defined in terms of what is expected of you. That I would mean the standards which you need to operate under. For example, if you look at chapter 6, it's an entire chapter which essentially talks about leadership and integrity. And by virtue of that chapter of the Constitution, the leaders are expected to operate within a particular framework which is established by the Constitution and established by the other acts of Parliament. Yes.
All right, so I've had leaders talk about the issue of accountability that the electorate can keep in check and accountability that the law can keep in check. They have talked about political and electoral accountability. Can you get into that and sort of debunk what these two accountability means and how we can, put them into the implementation?
Yes. You see, when you look at political accountability, for instance, you are talking about leaders who have already been elected or appointed into particular offices taking political responsibility.
So it's by the vote?
No, but there is electoral. You see, electoral accountability, it means you and I as electorate, we have got the mandate to keep these guys accountable to us, either by voting them in or ejecting them from their offices.
Okay.
Yes. Now that one falls under the electoral accountability. And then if you talk about the political accountability, you will commonly hear of the phrases of taking political responsibility. When somebody has done something, you will hear some politicians, civil society, or certain groupings who are really keen on the chapter 6 and the integrity and leadership and whatnot, talking about take political responsibility, resign from your office. Essentially what they are saying is this is now the point of us or you as a leader thinking about political accountability and saying that the particular decision has been made or a particular action has been done and this decision or action is in contravention of the provisions of law which talks about accountability, and therefore as a leader either resign on your own or we are going to engineer a mechanism to eject you from the office.
All right.
Yes,
now, when you look into these two mechanisms, they're quite interesting, and I will understand maybe electoral accountability is for the mwananchi to sort of implement, and political accountability is for the leader who has been appointed or elected to take the position and do the rightful thing.
Yes.
These two mechanisms of accountabilities, 59 years after independence, how best have they been, been implemented?
Yes, I think we have tried. If you were to look at it in the historical context, you realize that we have tried, but of course we have our own challenges. The systems which are there, which are supposed to help us, and you see we are part of the system.
Yeah, sure.
Because if you are talking about electoral accountability, it is upon us, for example, to be conscious of people that you are electing into particular offices. Right now we are headed into an election. There is nothing that really prevents us, if we are really keen to ensuring that you have people who are accountable, people of integrity to offices, for example, to say that on 8th you go in a particular polling station, you look on the ballot, you see these are the guys, these are individuals running for this position, and you say A has been tainted, B has been convicted, C, we don't know, is at least the least level, let's select this person.
The lesser evil, they say.
Yes. So if we were to take that approach as citizens, you see, we will realize that we have achieved a lot insofar as instituting a government that is premised on the integrity, leadership, and national values and principles of good governance. Yes.
All right. Now, we want us to get into real examples to understand whether, as a society, we have quite understood accountability. I know it's a long journey, given that even for our constitution that we have, the 2010 constitution, we are barely scratching the ground in terms of implementing it, even as it's almost 12 years on. 59 years after independence, when you look into the issue of political responsibility, how many leaders have taken the action to be accountable by their own volition? Or how many, in terms of, it is an appointment, it's a state appointment in some of those cases. How many times have we seen a leader in power, say the president, sack leaders because they have violated Chapter 6 of the Constitution, which entrenches accountability?
Of course, those cases are quite scanty for obvious reasons, for political reasons. And one of the reasons being that even the few of our leaders who have taken the political responsibility and they have said, let me do the honorable thing. There has been a scandal, for example, under my docket. I'm not the one involved, but because I believe in the spirit of accountability, in the spirit of political accountability, let me resign. You realize that even in such examples, which are very few, the reception of citizens has been very poor. For example, I will give you a live example right now. We are in the season of election. We have leaders who have been offered for themselves. Some of these leaders, previously you could see, they were willing to let their positions go. And maybe the investigation was carried out and whatever, it was concluded and these people were found to not have been culpable. When they come back, we don't appreciate them. You see, these are the kind of leaders that we need to go for. If a problem has arisen, for example, under your docket, and you've taken that responsibility, you say, I'm not the one responsible for this, there has been some mess under your docket, and you resign. I think as citizens, we need to look at such an individual, such a leader as somebody to be emulated. But the irony of it is this, that those who insist, those who cling on those positions, at whatever cost, we still cheer them. Yes, we celebrate them. Something has happened, a scandal has occurred, somebody will fight to the bitter end. Yes, but we still celebrate them. And you see now the problem begins with us, because we are if I was to call it, the primary sin is committed by electorate. Yes.
All right. Now, it brings a broader discussion to now look into the issue of electoral accountability. the voter, once he or she goes to the ballot, as you've said, you'll be given a list of names in terms, let me put it into context to say maybe the governorship positions.
Yes.
I have a list of seven leaders, some who have been acquitted in terms of corruption charges, others who cases are still pending in court, others who have a clean slate, so to speak. But still, we have had cases to point out in the 2017 general elections. We had leaders who had questionable character getting into power, a lot of them, to the extent that they had mentioned that maybe in Kenya, once you do a scandal is when you're closer to get into power. So when it comes to the issue of electoral accountability, is it the issue of not understanding what it really means and how it can be implemented? Or is the issue of voter education that has not really been streamlined to ensure that accountability is done at the primary place of sin, at the polling station?
Yes, it is I will look at it, it's a twofold thing. One is the issue of voter sensitization, voter education, civic education, and going back to the thing we used to call at independence, ignorance.
Okay.
Majority of the electorate actually do not really understand what accountability is all about, the essence of accountability. That is on one hand. On the other hand, there is the issue now of corruption and bribery. You see, we live in a society whereby majority of our people are still poor. So in as much as somebody may know that candidate A or candidate B is corrupt, he has done A, B, C, D, but because that person is poor, and you come with the money which you have stolen, you see, and you give that person, then that person will left with no option but to cheer you, to celebrate you, because he's the one now providing things for you. Yes. So, and we also need to look at it from that angle, the angle of corruption. And that's why it's very, very important to talk about electoral corruption. There is corruption in the context of elections. Yes.
Does it now go to the question of goodwill? Because we are looking at political accountability of a leader resigning because they have been implicated in a certain scandal. As we have seen in some cases, some people have even said, I'd rather die than resign. And the issue of electoral accountability in terms of the voter making the woke decision, is it an issue of goodwill that has affected the implementation of these two particular mechanisms of ensuring accountability?
Yes, true. It's the issue of goodwill on one hand, but there is also the issue of empowerment. You see, you need to empower the citizen. You need to empower the citizen. You need to empower even the institutions which are there for purposes of holding accountability. For example, judiciary, the National Police Service. You see, those are key institutions which, if we were to empower them and make them truly independent, they can really help us in a great deal insofar as the issues of accountability and corruption are concerned. Yes. So if we can do that, for example, we get to a level whereby we have a bold, independent, and impartial judiciary, a judiciary that can pronounce judgment for or against any person, regardless of his status. At that point, we will be able to deal with the issues of integrity and accountability.
Now, when we don't want to face the issues of corruption to sort of understand whether accountability is being kept in check, one of the clearest signs is when we are having the people who were in parliament, say, or in governorship seat last time, don't get the opportunity to serve for another term. When you look into the 2013 and vis-a-vis 2017 general elections, did you see a situation whereby leaders actually, the electorate actually put leaders into check in terms of accountabilities by ensuring that we don't vote in the same who didn't actually do anything during their term?
Of course, we see there are quite a number of elected leaders who are in the former regime, but they are not in this regime. During the last electoral cycle, they were elected, but after that, this one, they did manage to come back. Of course, that one can be said to be an example where electorate are exercising the accountability, and ideally that is the best way to exercise the accountability, because you can vote out the person you feel has violated rule A, B, C, D, which you have set as a bare minimum for the operation of your society, or you can bring in someone else whom you think is going to do the things that you want. But the question comes, and this is where now the rubber meets the road. this person who is being voted out, is he being voted out because of integrity tests which he failed, or because he failed to do some ABCD, including bribing voters?
Yeah.
So that is another issue. But for me, citizens, if they were to be conscious enough, if they were to rise to the occasion and take advantage of that avenue, that is one of the most potent avenues that citizens can exploit to ensure that we have a system, we have a government that is really based on the dictates of the Constitution, and particularly Chapter 6. Yes, yes.
All right, so while you're still on that, as you're finalizing on that bit, given that we cannot tell whether the electorate edged out the leaders due to accountability issues or due to sycophancy or political parties alignment, does it mean that we cannot be able to measure accountability at the vote due to not understanding why the electorate edged out different leaders?
We can, and I'm not ruling out the possibility that a number of these electorate, a number of these elected leaders who get voted out is because of accountability issue. I will give you one example, which I believe it was because of the accountability and the anti-integrity issues. The former governor for Bungoma, for example. You remember the infamous story of procurement of wheelbarrows and something like that, and it was widely circulated and broadcasted in both mainstream and social media that a single wheelbarrow was being procured at around 100 and something thousand. And you see, and this one at this point I also need to credit media, because without you people, we would not have known. So you came with the things in public and you disseminated around that it became known. So I believe that is an example. It's a very good example, which I genuinely, honestly believe that the then governor was voted out purely on the basis of that.
All right,
and it's a very good example to me, if you were to ask me.
Yeah, and that is a discussion we'll get into in depth to try and understand what really happened and quite cite the examples. But for now, we'll be taking our first break. That will be the end of our first segment. Continue interacting with us by sending your opinion and comments, as well as questions on our social media platforms at KUTV Kenya Live on YouTube, at KUTV Kenya on Facebook, and at KUTV_Kenya on Twitter. See you after this break.
So be sure to try this at home. It's a fun experience.
Karate is one of the most dynamic of all martial arts. A well-trained karateka is able to coordinate the body and the mind, thereby unleashing tremendous physical power at will. Today, we meet young boys and girls learning about the sport.
Lola ni programu inayokupa fursa ya kutizama video zozote pindi tu unapokuwa na nafasi. Hadithi za kukupa motisha, drama, maisha ya vyuo vikuu, teknolojia, masuala ya jamii, kuzuru maeneo tofauti, spoti, burudani na zaidi. Pata programu ya Lola sasa kwenye rununu yako kwa yote unayohitaji.
informative and provides solutions to problems that we face on a day-to-day basis in terms of legal aid. I'm joined by lawyer advocate Lungwe, who is taking me through the issues of accountabilities and why it is important. As we are finalizing our first segment, we talked about the issues of accountability and what are the key pillars and how to ensure that the electorate are accountable. Advocate Lungwe, as we finalize the first segment, we're talking about the issues of the pillars of accountability. Can we get into that and sort of interrogate some of these issues and cite examples in terms of making the electorate work on these matters?
Thank you, Irene. If you look at integrity as is established by our law, through our provision, particularly, and I keep on referring to Chapter 6 because now that is like the soul of our constitution, the soul of the nation, and the soul of every breathing body of this nation called Kenya. When you look at integrity and leadership, accountability, some of the key pillars are what I would say the avenues, ways in which accountability can be exercised. Mm-hmm. For example, things like right to recall members of parliament who have gone wrong or have violated the constitution.
Yeah.
Impeachment, for example, is another powerful avenue which we can use, and we have seen it actually get implemented.
Yeah.
For example, right now we have live cases of people who have been impeached. An example of Governor Sonko is an example at hand of somebody who was impeached and now is permanently barred from occupying any public office, whether elective or appointive.
Yeah.
So those are some of the pillars. And one thing I can point out at this point is that when you are talking about pillars of accountability, it boils down, it cascades down to the ordinary citizen. Because at the end of the day, that is the person who bears the greatest brand.
All right.
Yes.
So what are some of the strategies that the common mwananchi can employ? Because what has been seen is that once you elect a leader, the perception out there is that when the leader is having the 5-year constitutional term, there is nothing that the electorate can do in terms of ensuring the leader is accountable. It is said, let us wait for the next election to remove that particular leader. In the 5-year term, what are some of the strategies that the common mwananchi can do to ensure accountability away from impeachment?
There are a lot. I will give you an example of one of the avenues which I believe the parliament stifled. Right to recall.
Okay.
You see, majority of citizens and electorate do not know that you don't have to wait for 5 years, for example, to discipline an errant member of parliament or a member of county assembly. But now again, the constitution, if you look at Article 104 of the constitution, it provides that right to recall a member of parliament.
Yeah.
But I believe the mistake that drafters of that constitution or that provision did was that they said that parliament was to enact a law, to create a mechanism or a procedure of citizens enjoying that right to recall.
Yeah.
Now here is the catch. You want to discipline person A, and you are telling person A to give you a mechanism, a procedure of how you can exercise that right. So this is what happened. What Parliament did is that they went and they enacted what we now call the Elections Act. And if you look at the Elections Act, Section 45 and 46 provides the mechanisms of how you can recall a member of Parliament. And if you keenly read those provisions, you realize that it's almost impossible.
Yeah.
Because first of all, it says that for you to recall a member of Parliament, you need to ensure that that right is only exercisable 2 years after the election, or before 1 year to the next general election. So you are left with a time span of 2 years in between. And then it says that for a person to initiate that process of recalling a member of parliament, he has to have an order from the High Court declaring that that person has committed some evils. One, either he has grossly violated the constitution, or he has mismanaged the public resources, or he has committed an offense, an act which is an offense under the act, the said act. And then he says that for you to recall that member of parliament, first you need to gather signatures of 30% of the electorate in that constituency have their ID, their name, their fingerprints, and whatnot. So it becomes absolutely impossible. And then the third hurdle, which I think they put up, is that a person who contested an election, meaning you ran in that constituency and lost, then you are barred from initiating a record, because they say that
There's
would
conflict.
be deemed to be, you are just being vindictive against the person who beat you in the previous election. So if you look at those procedural aspects, ideally cannot be attained by an ordinary citizen like you and I. And that's why that one is a gone, avenue, so to speak. But so the only avenue that you are left with is the avenue that the Constitution elaborated the mechanism, the impeachment. And that's why the impeachment is working. Hey, because it's a straightforward thing. You present your petition, is supported by this particular number of member of county assembly or the parliament, and then it goes like that.
All right. So is that to say that the member of county assembly now remains to be the avenue for the common mwananchi in terms of putting the leaders accountable, and that is only on the county level, because there's no threshold of impeaching a member of parliament. They can only be recalled, and now we have said there is no specific procedural
there is, but the procedure that is laid down is unattainable to an ordinary person, an ordinary citizen. But you see now, when it comes to impeaching a member of the executive, be it at national level or the county level, the Constitution clearly provided another body. Now, because of separation of power and whatnot, executive, or rather legislature, both at county and at national level, is supposed to keep executive in checks, you see. So it becomes so easier for county assembly, for example, if it's opposed to a particular governor because a particular governor has done ABCD against the law, it becomes so easier for them to foment a bill or to foment an impeachment motion and eject, for example, governor or the president out of office, you see. But now when it comes to members of county assembly and members of parliament, it becomes so difficult because the same people who the law is supposed to apply to are the people who created that law. So they made it very difficult for an ordinary person to recall them.
All right. It's quite a tricky situation there, which now begs the question of what now is the importance of accountability. How can the mwananchi or even an elected leader, say the member of county assembly, be able to initiate some of this process? Is it really beneficial, or should we throw in the towel and say, let's wait for 5 years for them to complete their term, then we can take action? What's the real importance of accountability?
Accountability is quite important. It's not something you can wait, especially people who occupy executive position. You see, for example, if you look at a member of parliament or a member of county assembly, you see that's a person who can go wrong and to contain him for 5 years. Because ideally what they do as per the Constitution is three things: to represent you, to legislate, and to oversight. You see. But when it comes to a person who is in charge of resources, people occupy the CEO positions, the executive positions. And that's why here I credit the Constitution. So that it becomes so, it's not so stringent, it's not so difficult to hold this person accountable. It's not so difficult, by the way, to hold a cabinet minister accountable, especially if you have a president who is cooperative. It's not so difficult to hold this what we call now executive county members at county assembly accountable, especially if you get a governor who is cooperative. You see, and you see, for me, that is something that's quite commendable, because these are the individuals who really are people who are in charge of resources and the people who implement policies and programs of the government.
Now, what can the electorate look into when they want to pinpoint whether a leader has been accountable in terms of what they have been elected to do? Because when it comes to the issue of separation of powers, the executive has different responsibility, the legislature has different responsibilities. What do we look into in terms of ensuring that the leader is accountable? Because we have confused accountability. Sometimes we are focused on corruption only and not looked into the issues of development. And when it comes to the issue of development, what are we really looking into? Are they the issues that are enshrined in the constitutions, or is it the issue of the manifesto that they laid out when they were seeking the votes from the electorate?
I think you're raising a very important issue, because if you look at accountability, it's not just about corruption. Also, non-performance is an aspect of accountability and lack of integrity. You can't just be occupying a particular position, doing nothing, drawing benefits and salary, and yet there is not, even if you are not stealing anything. So that is another issue. But now the reason why we emphasize on corruption is because corruption has got the spiral effect. You see, if public coffers, for example, is looted, if public resources are being stolen left, right, and center by the politicians or the leaders, what will happen is that we will not have medicine in our hospitals. Our roads will continue to have potholes. You see, our schools and education facilities will continue being dilapidated. You see, so the spiral effect of corruption makes corruption to be at the apex, at the top, when you are talking about accountability and integrity. But in essence, accountability, it covers all these things. People drawing, for example, we have had cases of absentee office occupiers. Somebody's in the office drawing benefits, but he's doing nothing. That's another form of corruption and another form of lack of integrity altogether.
All right. Now, when you talk about accountability, you will agree with me that there's power in numbers. There's really power in numbers, and there's power in coming together with the synergy of effort. What can the electorate do to ensure that they come together to sort of interrogate and ask themselves whether the leaders who they got into power are quite accountable? You've mentioned that we have the mechanism in terms of the county level seats for the member of county assembly to put to present a petition in the House to have the governor impeached, or maybe a CEC of that particular county. Now, we have also said that for the mechanism of recalling a member of parliament, there's the threshold of having signatures and having a high court, order to implement the same. So, for the electorate down at the ground, what are some of the mechanisms that they can do to put efforts together so that they can become as one, either through the non-governmental organizations or through a community of people, say a CBO or something?
You see, that one boils down to citizens. And I always believe there is an old African proverb which says, if there is no enemy within, the enemy outside can do us no harm. We wield that power. We have the capacity to change the trajectory of our country as citizens, if we so decide. See, I gave you an example earlier on. You walk in the polling booth and you are given a ballot containing names of various candidates, and these are people you have interacted with. What prevents you from choosing the right candidate? No one. Nobody prevents you except yourself. You see. So if we can decide, and the process of making that decision starts by being conscious ourselves. You need to be conscious. You need to ask yourself, what should I consider when I'm electing a leader? Yes. So that you shun these other parochial considerations like tribalism, ethnicity, who gave me 200 bob. You see, once you throw those things and you push them aside and you confront these guys, you say, here we have 4 presidential candidates. I'm walking in the polling booth. Who among these persons do I genuinely, honestly, truly believe can serve me?
All right.
Yes.
Now, that is at the ballot, and that's say it's 7 days to the election. That is what you're trying to communicate to the electorate. But now I'm imagining that a leader is 2 years into power, and you've seen that we can't deal with this particular leader. We have seen maybe the members of the county assembly are somewhat having some sort of laxity. We've had issues of MCS being bribed not to present some petitions in terms of impeaching a governor. So what can the common mwananchi do? We have had cases of the electorate demonstrating, but it ends at that demonstration. Is there any other way we can wield power without?
We can. There are various ways, and for me, if you had to ask me, one of the most neglected and underrated way is ignoring these guys. Politicians are after hype, are after popularity, are after being cheered. If I know that Irene is my elected MCA, governor, or MP, and she has mismanaged public resources, she has abused the office, next time she comes to a place for funeral, don't show up, don't cheer. I'm telling you for sure, politicians will go back and change. They really enjoy that clout, and if you can deny them that audience, you can deny them that relevance, you see, they will change. But another thing is this: if you look at the Constitution, Article 1 of our Constitution talks about the sovereign power, and this sovereign power being exercised in accordance to the Constitution. And the Constitution went ahead to elaborate mechanisms under which and in which we can exercise that sovereign power. For example, Article 37 of the Constitution talks about right to demonstrate, to picket, and to present a petition. If you look for example, Article 119 of our Constitution talks about our right to present a petition to Parliament, and you have seen this one implemented. So citizens, if citizens they feel that in as much, even though this guy has served for 3 years or 2.5 years, but he has committed an impeachable sin under the Constitution, we are going to present a petition, for example, to Parliament to have this cabinet secretary removed. It is possible. It is possible to do that. There is nothing that bars us from doing that.
All right. Now, what are some of the legal frameworks that we have in the country in terms of ensuring accountability? They have said that the 2010 Constitution has really helped to, devolve some of these functions to bring them closer to the monarchy and, of course, streamline some of the legal mechanisms in terms of ensuring accountabilities. Are we so far so good in terms of the framework of accountability?
Yes. If you had to ask me, we are even before the Constitution came in place, a lot of people never understood. You see, what the Constitution did was to amplify some of these things and put them to a level whereby now they were beyond the manipulation for the ordinary or beyond the manipulation of the elected leaders. But even prior to enactment of the Constitution 2010, we still had the framework. For example, I will give you three. Look at the Public Officers Ethics Act of 2003. It's a very powerful act, and it made very radical changes in terms of accountability. You see this aspect of people saying wealth declaration was a creation of that act.
Also, it's not something.
It's not something that just came with the Constitution. Creation of that act. We have the Ethics and Anti-Corruption Act of 2003. We have the Proceeds of Crime and Anti-Money Laundering Act of 2009. These were statutes that were there even before the Constitution came in place. And for example, if you look at the 2009 statute on money laundering, you have seen it working. Recently, we have an example of the running mate for Kenya Kwanza coalition running mate, having his property or money forfeited on the basis of 2009 Act. So these are the laws, these are frameworks which have been in place, but now because of, we always blame the law. That is we always run there because the law cannot defend itself. We blame the law. Yes, but we have had this framework and they're still there and we are still enacting more. Even at the international level, we have international instruments, what we are calling now the conventions, and which have been ratified by our country. For example, Convention on Combating Corruption and Organized Crimes. Those are the legal instruments, and they create very powerful mechanisms of holding our leaders accountable, but they are never implemented. They are never implemented. So the issue is not about the law. The issue is about us, and the issue is about the leaders we put in office to be in charge of our affairs on our behalf.
So it's really a matter of goodwill, because the law in place, so it means the institution in place are not really quite implementing the legal framework.
They are not, and even those that are implementing, they're just trying to, what I will call, it's an attempt. Of course, we need to commend them. Little effort that is made. For example, right now, the judiciary has been at the forefront for pushing for accountability, and that's why it has been able to make some of the bold declarations, bold judicial pronouncements, starting with the nullification of 2017 presidential election. That was an act of accountability. You see, judiciary holding executive accountable and holding other independent offices accountable. And sometimes when you talk about independent offices, people think that you are independent from accountability. No, you are independent, but you are accountable. And that's why the Supreme Court can order IBC to carry out certain action. For example, present the material that you used to run an election. What we now famously call the server. Open. You see, that's an act of accountability.
Okay.
And we need to commend our judiciary for being on the forefront despite numerous challenges that it has experienced.
All right, thank you, Advocate Lungo, for that particular perspective in terms of the legal framework we have. All right, we are taking another break, but once we return, we'll be talking about the issue of the ballot and the issues of rigging and whether electoral manipulation can affect the issues of accountability here in Kenya. You're watching Law Matters. We are taking a short break. We'll be right back.
Driving and riding without incidences on the road is such an amazing experience. But do you know while many road traffic crashes are avoidable, human behavior continues to be the leading cause. Speeding, lane indiscipline, drunk driving, distracted driving, failure to wear a helmet, and failure to use available pedestrian ways have been flagged by NTSA as the fatal 6 behaviors likely to lead to a fatal crash and serious injuries. As part of the Usalama Barabarani campaign, we request all road users to prevent these fatal 6 behaviors for their own safety and that of others. When driving, ensure your speed is within the stipulated limits. The road ahead is clear before overtaking. Stick to your lane. Keep left unless carefully overtaking. You're well rested if driving on long distances, and you never drink and drive. Usalama Barabarani starts with you. Fika Salama. This message is brought to you by the National Transport and Safety Authority and the European Union.
Karate is one of the most dynamic of all martial arts. A well-trained karateka is able to coordinate the body and the mind, thereby unleashing tremendous physical power at will. Today, we meet young boys and girls learning about the sport.
Lola is an app that gives you a chance to watch videos, listen to audios, and read articles wherever you are for free. Motivational stories, dramas, campus life, technology, lifestyle, adventure, sports, academics, jobs, entertainment, and more. Download Lola now on Play Store. All you need, you got Lola.
Welcome back. You're watching Law Matters. My name is Irene Mwangi. I'm standing in for Dr. Ngugi Kingara. Now, on this particular segment, we are looking into the issue of electoral manipulation. In 7 days, Kenyans will be going to the ballot to elect their leaders. And the question has been, will they elect their leaders in the issues of accountability, or what will be the mechanisms that they'll be using to choose the leaders in the 6 elective seats? Dr. Lungwe, Advocate Lungwe, I beg your pardon. When you look into the issue of electoral manipulation, in this country, elections have been quite a high-stake sort of election when it comes to the cutthroat competition by different leaders and different political parties. Election manipulation and the issue of rigging, does it interfere with accountability and what the electorate decision in terms of choosing accountable leaders?
Oh, certainly it does. It does in a very great way. Because you see, if a leader can get into office through other mechanisms except direct mandate from the people, and the Constitution says that that office, for you to occupy it, you need to have been elected by people, then that's where the original corruption and sin is committed. You see, and that's why it's important at this point in time in our evolution and history of our country. That we have institutions which are tasked with ensuring that we have a process that is fair, transparent, credible, and which meets the threshold of the Constitution. We have those institutions do their job. And this, by this sense, I am referring to police, I'm referring to judiciary, because it plays a key role, especially in post-election accountability. And that's why people have got the opportunity to go to court and say that, look, these elections were not conducted in accordance with the dictates of the law. And if the court agrees with them, then it nullifies that election. But even before we get to petition stage, why can the institutions tasked with ensuring that we have a constitutional elections do their job? IBC, for example, right now the ball is now in their court. They have to ensure that we have an election that will stand the test of the Constitution. You see, allegations, for example, touching on procurement of electoral material are very important insofar as the integrity of the process is concerned. Independency of other institutions and players, for example, the police and other supposedly other institutions which are supposed to be independent. They're supposed to be independent in actual practice, so that at the end of the day, we come out of a process that is believable, that is a process that is trusted, and we know that surely what we have gotten out of this process is a result of what we exactly wanted.
Right, and before you even get into the ballot, they've said that maybe the issue of accountability goes back to nominations. You will understand that our democracy has not come to the maturity of electing independent leaders per se. We are slowly getting to that. But political parties have also interfered with the issue of accountabilities by having the same leaders have different tickets in terms of the elective seats. I'll say, for example, if Advocate Lungu had in 2013, say, in using ODM party in, say, Mathare, we'll have him for the next four electioneering periods still on that particular ticket, and therefore the Monanchi is not, open to choosing leaders, because even the independent candidates are short of cut out of the competition due to one reason or another. Does it go back even to the political parties' processes?
It does. It goes there in this sense. And by the way, I need to point out this. Voting someone in based on political party is not a bad thing. It's a practice that is practiced by developed democracies all over the world. The issue we have is that the things that we are calling political parties are not political parties. These are political vehicles created by particular individuals to serve their interests, and they are not premised on ideologies and policies. For example, in US, you will get this Democratic Party, and this is what it stands for. This is a Republican Party, this is what it stands for. But here, it's about individuals. It's not about...
it's all about interest.
Personalities and interests, not about what you stand for. So that you get to a level whereby people, as long as you are standing on the ticket of this political party in a particular place or zone, definitely you'll be elected, you see. And for us to move from that place whereby now we start talking about policies, we need to reform our political parties so that our political parties are not based on tribal mobilization, are not based on personalities, but they are based on issues. They're based on issues. And if we can get to that level, then we won't be crying about independent candidates, because even these independent candidates will be fighting for space legitimately within a particular political formation. And they say, I stand for party A, I'm fighting for the space because party A stands for devolution, for example. It stands for decentralization of resources. And therefore, if you were to elect me based on the political party stand, you will still have gotten your decision right, because you know this is what the party stands for. But what we have right now is a scenario whereby we have temporary shells which mushroom during electoral period, and after 5 years they disappear. You see, so take for example in 2013 we had Jubilee, and Jubilee, which is a coalition of TNA and URP.
Yeah.
On the other side we had CORD.
In 2013, yes.
In 2013.
Yeah, it was
Come 2017, CORD had disappeared.
Then we had that.
Jubilee, TNA and URP had disappeared. We had now Jubilee Party and the NASA. Come 2022, the same script. So it becomes so difficult to say authoritatively that we have political parties. But rather, for me, we just have political vehicles which are supposed to serve specific short-term interests, selfish political interests.
All right.
That's why.
All right. Now, when we try and contextualize this particular discussion on accountability here in the country, you have mentioned that we already have a legal framework. We have the electorate who know what should be done, although in some areas we'll say maybe voter education has not been streamlined. Therefore, it begs the question that what now hinders the country the electorate, I beg your pardon, to choose leaders who are accountable? Because each and every term of governance, we have complained about corruption, we have complained about leaders who don't implement the manifesto. So what is this stumbling block to accountability of leaders?
That's a very difficult question to give a straightforward answer, because it's a conglomeration of various factors coming together. Of course, we have talked about the issue of ignorance playing a role. We have also mentioned the issue of what I will call, Achebe calls it in his book, primitive loyalty. But those parochial considerations, because person A comes from my community, it doesn't matter what he has done. It doesn't matter the sins that he has committed. It doesn't matter how much he has transgressed the law or the constitution. I'm going to elect him.
Yeah.
You see, so we need to come from that kind of thinking, that kind of tribal mindset, whereby thinking that somebody who is closer to you, somebody who comes from you, even if he harms you, you would rather persevere that than go for somebody who can help you if that other person is from a different community.
Okay.
So we need to, it's a kind of mindset. We need to overhaul our thinking, to completely change the way we think, the way we view politics, the way we conceptualize public issues and public affairs, leadership and governance, and understand that the political decisions that we make are not just decisions that are supposed to affect us alone. They are supposed to affect even the future generation, the second, third, and fourth generation to come. Yes, and that's a very key thing. It's a very key thing, and it starts with the electorate, appreciating that this is a means to the end. It's not an end in itself. Choosing a leader is a means to the end.
So let us bring the discussion closer home and bridge the discussion to sort of say, so what are now the tools that we can say that these are the tools that we'll be using to make our leaders accountable and for the electorate to stay woke at such an opportune time that you're going to the ballot to elect new leaders in different elective positions?
And some of those tools, of course, are available within us, and I will mention this. Look at non-political organizations, for example, NGOs. You see, NGOs in this country, civil societies, during every election, they provide something they call red card. They flag certain politicians, and I think it was also done by EACC recently.
They did.
They produced a list of particular politicians and the public figures, and they say these people have issues, and we are, in as much as we haven't convicted any, in as much as some of them are not
still in court.
They are not. Some of them are not even in court. But you are being warned that these individuals have got issues. So please, be warned as a citizen. Don't elect these individuals into public offices. So that is another powerful mechanism. But now the problem with us is this, especially when we get to a level where we are at this moment, where most of us are now charged politically. It doesn't matter what you say. We ignore some of these red flags, but they really help us a lot. So if we can take that into account and say, look, you have been blacklisted, for example, by Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, you have been blacklisted by civil societies. Why do you think we should elect you? So that is a powerful tool to be employed. And again, now that one will complement the other mechanisms that the Constitution has elaborately set out.
All right. Now, thank you so much, Dr. Lungo, for giving us a perspective on the issue of accountability of leaders. Because of time constraint, we can't be able to continue this particular discussion, but so far so good in terms of ensuring that our electorate know the bare minimum and what they can do. They can be empowered to ensure that we have accountable leaders at such an opportune time that we are heading to the polls.
Thank you very much, and I'm very grateful for having me on your show.
All right, thank you. All right, this has been Law Matters, a show that is educative, informative, and provides legal solutions to what we face on a day-to-day basis. What an opportune time to have the discussion on accountability of leaders at a time when the electorate will be going on the ballot on August 9th to elect new leaders. It is a transitional election, given that we're electing new leaders from the presidency all the way to the members of county assembly. I want to thank our learned guest for having this discussion, as well as the production team. Remember, this is not the end of this particular discussion. We'll be engaging in our social media platforms at KTV Kenya on YouTube, at KTV Kenya on Facebook, and KTV Kenya and KTV_Kenya on Twitter. My name is Irene Mwangi. I'm standing in for Dr. Ngoge Kingara. Have yourself a splendid evening. Goodbye.